Hello again, everybody. This is Stan Scott with Foggy Bottom Line Media.
And this is Scott Konopasek.
And we're here today to talk about campaign finance reform. We have a special guest, the first guest we've had on the podcast, in fact, Jeff Mangan from out in Montana. And Jeff is running a program called the Montana Plan. And this is a plan to sort of try to do something about Citizens United. People in both parties, Democrats, Republicans, and independents, actually, have concerns over money in politics. There's a concern that donors can buy elections. Here in Virginia, Dominion Power gets a lot of criticism for donating to state-level politicians when they're controlled by the state corporation commission. So they're donating political campaign funds to the people who basically monitor them and provide oversight. This happens nationally, and it's become a big problem since the Supreme Court of the United States ruled in the Citizens United case that corporations can spend as much money as they want in politics because it's free speech. It's to them it's a free speech question. So we invited Jeff on to talk about his plan, the Montana plan. Tell us what it's like. And then we can, Scott and I will ask some questions and we'll get some sense. And then at the end, you can find out more about how you can support this effort because this is a key component to improving politics in the U.S. and at the state level and making it basically more fair for everyone. So, Jeff, tell us a little bit about yourself, please.
Oh, you bet. First of all, thanks, Scott. Thanks, Stan, for inviting me on. Yeah, like I was telling you before we started, I love the name of the podcast. I think it's great and the story behind it. But it's a lot of times I feel like I'm walking in a lot of fog, and particularly around campaign finance. But my name's Jeff Mangan. A lifelong Montanan over here on near the West Coast, a little bit further away from you gentlemen, and small businessman. My wife and I have owned a small business for 30 some years. I've served in Montana's legislature, both in the House and in the Senate in the early 2000s. In 2017, I was appointed Montana's Commissioner of Political Practices, served in that role through 2023. And upon leaving that role, stayed busy in public service and other things, but really started tackling, looking at how we can really defeat money in politics, since Citizens United. It's just been kind of a passion of mine, and we think we've come across a way to do that. It's been the foundation of the Transparent Election Initiative, which is the group that I founded, and the mechanism that we're calling the Montana Plan. So we can get in that in a minute.
Yeah. Hey, let me jump in here and talk a little bit more about Jeff and my experience with him. He and I have known each other for almost 2 years. We worked on the same project together, a project sponsored by the Carter Center, which is the Montana Election Observation Initiative. Jeff he's committed his life to good governance and to ethical leadership. And I've really enjoyed that relationship with him and following what he's doing to make things better in Montana. Now, because Citizens United was a Supreme Court decision, I and maybe many of you as well thought the only chance of getting that overturned would be to go back to the Supreme Court and have them undo their previous decision. But that seems pretty unlikely. So when I learned from Jeff that he was working on this Montana plan, it really struck me as something interesting, intriguing, and I really wanted to find out a lot more. And I think it's a really imaginative, great potential solution to the challenge. And I think, Jeff, you're going to let us know a little bit how it works, what the concept behind it is. Could you just take it away?
Oh, you bet. Let me first start talking a little bit about Citizens United, if I can. in 2010. Basically everyone thinks, and they're right. Stan is right when people equate now, because of Citizens United, corporations with personhood. That it's easy to say that what Citizens United did was basically make people out of corporations, and that's a fair characteristic. But what the court actually did, and the court actually said, should scare people much more. Yeah, what they actually said is that independent spending by corporations cannot be corrupting. They literally said that. They wrote that right into the law. Is that independent spending by corporations cannot be corrupting. I mean, it can't even give the appearance of corruption. So they made that definitive statement. And we all know, and we've all watched what's happened in the past several years since Citizens United, in the last 13, 15 years, that's certainly not true. I think we probably hear the word corruption day to day in both political parties, from the local to the federal level. I would venture to guess we hear the word corruption more than we ever heard pre-2010. And it's because the amount of money since Citizens United that corporations and dark money has poured into our elections has literally skyrocketed. And if you take a look at any of the data up to 2010, independent expenditure spending, for example, that line is really flat. It's flat for the last 100 years. And you hit Citizens United, and it literally goes from flat to straight up. As a matter of fact, there are folks like Open Secrets and others, the Brennan Center, Campaign Legal Center, those folks that track data. But if you go to Open Secrets, you can see that data for yourself. In 2008, the last federal presidential election prior to Citizens United, independent expenditure spending nationwide, non-party spending, was about $144 million nationwide. In 2024, that number, in 2024, the last federal presidential year, that number was $4.2 something billion. So basically a 2,800% increase. And that number just continues to go up. So you saw this flat line, kind of normal money in our elections, and literally since 2010, that number's gone straight up. So when we talk about Citizens United, and we think, we've thought about the last, citizens or corporations are people. That's what the court said. It can't be corrupting. States have attempted various disclosure laws and other regulations and those type of things that keep getting knocked down or enjoined because of the Supreme Court's decision on Citizens United. We kind of basically gave up on it. We kind of just there's nothing we can do. But folks have been thinking about this issue, and when I was the Commissioner of Political Practices, became good friends with Commissioner Weintraub, who was an FEC commissioner, and her chief of staff is a gentleman by the name of Tom Moore. And Tom worked at as her chief counsel and chief of staff till about 2023, and then went on to work for another organization. He did some research and was working on board governance, corporate board governance, and came across this idea that, wait a minute, we've been looking at corporations and spending all wrong. We've been looking at it just from what how they are found now, how corporations are created now, not the history of how corporations were created in the first place. And if you go back far enough, you go back 150 years or so, a couple hundred years, and the history of the United States, you'll find when corporations were first chartered, that's the important thing, how states chartered and told states corporations could do business in their state. They were very specific. They said, you can be a railroad, but you can only be a railroad, and you can only be a railroad for 10 years, and you only have these limited sets of powers. And as the numbers of states grew, as businesses grew, and states became competing for corporations to do business in their state, they basically went from a specific set of powers that they would grant the corporations to this general set of corporate powers. You come to our state, you'll have all general powers, and basically since the mid 1800s to today, to all 50 states today, if you incorporate in your state, whether it be Montana or Virginia or otherwise, your state grants you all general powers, and the courts have determined that those powers are the same as a natural person, as you or I. So we have been regulating states on powers they already have, the powers that they've already been given. However, corporations are not a federal, aren't created federally. States are responsible for their own developing their own corporations, setting their own corporate charters and laws. So it's not a First Amendment issue that we're looking at. We're actually looking at a 10th Amendment issue, and the power of states to actually go and in this case, we are going to revise the powers the state gives corporations through their charter. So instead of all general powers, you'll have every power that you currently have, with the exception of spending in politics. We never intended, Montanans never intended, when we gave you your charter, that you could spend in politics. It's not a course of business that businesses need. It's not necessary for business. And it's a way for states to finally take some control back, and particularly around the money spent in elections. So it really is as simple as that. It's just something we hadn't thought about for 150 years. We're not talking about First Amendment. We're talking about 10th Amendment. We're not talking about campaign finance regulation, or a regulation that we put in place on something they already had. We're talking about starting anew under the 10th Amendment on the foundational level of corporations in our state, by removing the power to spend in elections.
Yeah, so let me maybe recap that, make sure that I have it straight. So the Supreme Court in Citizens United said that corporations have these general powers, and that accords them the same status as a citizen, and therefore they have all the same individual rights under the Constitution that you or I would have. And
Correct.
nobody went back and looked at why do they only have these general powers. And the states, it sounds like, are the ones that grant the powers, can say what a corporation can do and not do, which has kind of been overlooked.
Right.
So now the Montana plan proposes that Montana amend its, and I'll ask you to go into some detail here, there's constitution or statutes to take away, to subtract from those general corporate powers granted by the state, to take away the right or the power to participate through campaign contributions.
Right.
Do I have that right?
Correct. So every state, and this doesn't apply to Montana, this applies to every state. That's the beauty of all this. We just happen to be starting in Montana. We can talk a little bit about why here in a bit. But every state, basically, you can do this one of three ways. We can go to our state legislatures and address powers that way. We can go through statutory initiative. I think 23 states in the District of Columbia provide for direct citizen democracy. And some states like Montana, you can actually change our constitution through direct citizen democracy. Changing our constitution is the strongest avenue that we have available to us. And that's what we chose to do in Montana, because that's one of the pathways that we have. But states could start in their own state legislatures and do this there. And believe me, we're starting in Montana, but we get calls and emails each and every day about how can we do this in our state. So this is something that's catching on, and it's going to be an ongoing discussion regardless of what happens in Montana. So,
and folks,
those powers, again, we haven't looked at it, except for over 150 years. But the states never gave up their ability to foundationally change how corporations do business in their state. So every state has the power to determine what powers a corporation has as they're chartered. So, and rights derive from power. So if you don't have the power, you don't have the right, and that's the whole basis behind the Montana Plan.
And folks, it's no surprise that this is starting in Montana. Historically, Montana was one of the very first states, really pretty soon after statehood, to regulate campaign finance, to regulate political donations from corporations and from people. And that was, I think, Jeff, it was because of the copper miners. The copper mine interests were basically taking over the government by more or less bribing politicians, right? And then,
Montanans pretty much know their history, or at least know of the Copper Kings.
yeah.
And back then we had the Butte, Montana, the richest hill on earth, a huge copper mining, a huge copper mine that literally had money pouring out of the state of Montana in the late 1800s, early 1900s. There was, you can't even put your finger on something that would be, anecdotal today to what was happening during that time. It literally was the richest hill on earth, and there was so much money there, and the competition to be a part of that industry and to extract those minerals, that copper, was fought by these corporations and fat cats and wealthy businessmen that wanted nothing more than the money, and they bribed, they cheated, they stole, and a whole history in Montana about how that was done. And then the best part of that story, however, is Montanans got sick of it. Montanans saw what was happening. We were one of the most corrupt places in the United States of America. We certainly didn't want that distinction, and we rose up and did something about it, and fought for reform, direct citizen reform in our Constitution that led to into 1912 to the Corrupt Practices Act, which one of the first states in the United States to ban corporate money in elections. And we did that back in 1912 because of the corruption that we faced for the decade before. And that the Corrupt Practices Act of 1912, plus a number of other really important initiatives at the time, but we'll just focus on the Corrupt Practices Act. That stayed in place in Montana until 2012, till after Citizens United. But because of Citizens United, it was found to be unconstitutional, and that whole history of Montana was basically thrown out because of Citizens United.
Right.
So there's a U.S. history lesson kind of built into our discussion here today. In Montana, it was the mining interests, the mining barons. In the Northwest, Oregon and Washington, it was the timber barons who ran things. And back at the end of the 19th century and beginning of the 20th century, U.S. senators were appointed by legislators and not directly elected by the people. And legislators were put in position basically by these robber barons. Now in California, it was the railroad barons that were running the show. So there was this huge movement in the western part of the United States to empower citizens to do things that they couldn't get the puppet legislatures to do, which led to the citizen initiatives, both for constitutional amendments and for statutes. That's why everyone's heard of Prop 13, and the Western United States has this long history of direct democracy, where people can directly influence things. Well, here in Virginia, in many places in the country that don't have that similar history, that populist movement uprising by the citizens really don't have citizen-based initiatives. But if I understand what you're saying, Jeff, there's three paths for doing this. Two of them are citizen-driven. One of them is an initiative to change the statutes, to propose legislation. The other is a citizen-led initiative to amend the Constitution. Or you could just lobby the legislature and get them to do it on their own.
They will literally.
This is
they will literally, Scott, be all. I mean, because the citizens will ultimately drive their legislators to pass something like this or do something like this. So it really does, go the power back to the people, no matter which avenue that a state chooses to take.
Right. So right now you are doing an initiative, citizen initiative in Montana to amend the Constitution to make this change. So can you tell us a little bit about what that process is and where you're at in it and what challenges you're encountering as you work through it?
I appreciate that. Like I said, it's the hardest. It's the most difficult path that we have. But we're committed to get corporate and dark money out of our elections, and we chose the constitutional initiative route. And in Montana, we have to basically develop the initiative, to write the initiative language, submit it to the state of Montana. Once submitted, it goes through a series of review through legislative services. Which we've gone through that process. We had to change some formatting, those type of things. And then it goes to a legal sufficiency review with the Attorney General of the state. And that's where we are now. And they have said that the structure of our initiative does not meet the legal sufficiency standards for becoming an initiative for the state of Montana. That was not unexpected. We expected that before we filed. Because that type of roadblock has been attempted before, in particular by this Attorney General. But we felt very confident that we met all the structure requirements, which is basically it's one vote. You're only changing one thing. You don't have to ask the citizens of the state to vote on several different components to make sure that they understand what you're doing. The Attorney General says we do. We say we don't. And in Montana, if that happens, if they determine it's legally insufficient, our recourse is that we can appeal that directly to the Montana Supreme Court, that decision. And we have done that as of a week and a half ago. We appealed that decision directly to the Montana Supreme Court. Just yesterday, the Montana Attorney General had his deadline to respond to our appeal, which they did. And so now it's in the hands of the Montana Supreme Court to make a decision in a fairly expedited and timely manner. They take these things fairly seriously because they know that there's a lot of things that goes on to putting an initiative on the ballot, whether it's just a statutory initiative or a constitutional initiative. So we expect them to make a decision on our appeal, hopefully within the next, 30 days or so. But that's just a guess on my part. It could be shorter, it could be longer. Assuming we are successful in that appeal, and they say that it is legally sufficient. We probably expect a couple of more roadblocks on ballot statement and ballot language that we'll have to litigate over. But we're confident that once we get it on the ballot, hopefully sometime in the end of December, January, then the real work begins for us. We have to collect 60,300 and some odd signatures, verified signatures from across 40 legislative districts in the state of Montana. And as you gentlemen know, Montana is a large state. Our districts, that's not an easy task. And we plan to do that with volunteer signature gathering. We don't plan to have paid signature gathering. Our goal is to collect 100,000 signatures across 50 legislative districts from the time period of January through June. We think it can be done. We're putting that organization together as we speak. But that will be the most difficult, largest operation the state has seen in a long time, particularly on the volunteer side. And if we're successful, which we hope we will be, it'll be placed, we're working to get it placed on the 2026 ballot in November of next year. And we're confident that once on the ballot, even with, I'm sure a massive campaign against us, that it'll be successful.
Yeah, that is a huge lift to gather that many signatures across the state, especially if you're relying on volunteers to do it. As someone who's validated millions of signatures on petitions over the years in California and Washington and Utah, that's a really heavy lift. So, who are you working with, or who do you hope to be working with to organize the volunteers? And are you getting any money from anywhere to help with this?
We have, this is truly a bottom-up grassroots effort in Montana. I'm the founder of the founder and chief cheerleader of this, and maybe the busiest volunteer. I'm still a volunteer, but it's been a chore. But our team is made up of folks like myself. Folks that are interested in making Montana a better place, interested in citizens getting their voice back, interested in stopping this flow of money that is just, literally taken, literally taken our voice away just because the amount of money anymore, but no matter where, if you're in Montana or Virginia or anywhere in between. Every election cycle that you are going to see now a mailbox filled with printed material. You're going to see TV ads just, taking over the airwaves. You're going to see texts and emails and other things coming through your personal devices. You're going to see the same thing on streaming devices and iPads and phones and watches, etc. You can't track who's paying for these ads, who's attempting to buy your influence, and the reason that they're doing it in the first place. And so the people that lose in that scenario are the citizens, is the voter. You can't work to make a informed decision on any candidate or issue if you can't determine who's talking to you and who's telling you the truth, and all of that. So in order to rectify that, kind of back the way it was, we have to get rid of corporate and dark money out of our politics. And we think this is the most unique and innovative way that anybody's thought of in a heck of a long time to get that done.
Yeah, definitely innovative. So there's a little bit.
I think let me jump in real quick, Scott, because I think this is a key technical point that listeners may be interested in, and that is that one of the things this did was it helped corporations circumvent the campaign finance limits that on contributions that go directly to candidates and their committees. In federal elections, the number's changing, so I think it's 5,500 now total with a primary and a regular election. The point is, if I wanted to give money to a congressional candidate, there's a limit on the amount I could give, right? And corporations can't give it all. So what they did to circumvent this, they would create what they called a political action committee, right? That would then take money from from corporations. And before Citizens United, that money was limited as well. There were also rules that limited coordination between campaigns and corporations or these PACs, right? But so when you get these flyers in the mail that say, paid for by AmericansForProsperity.org or something like that, the key piece to remember here is that Americans for Prosperity does not have to tell you where they got the money that paid for that flyer, right? So
Right.
I could give $1 million to Americans for Prosperity, and they can hide that, which means no citizen can find out that Stan Scott or Foggy Bottom Line Media or Dominion Power gave money to that PAC to support that candidate or that cause or whatever. So I think one of the key things about the Montana plan is that it would sort of take us back to where we were before, where this dark money, and Jane Meyer wrote a great book on this dark money in politics, at least in Virginia. I know you know this, Jeff, and of course you do, Scott. In Virginia here, campaign finance, it's the wild, wild west. I can give as much money to a candidate as I want, or to a committee, a PAC if I want, and there's no limit whatsoever on that number, which is pretty dangerous in a world where some people have control of $500 billion in money, in wealth, right? But at least I have to disclose it. Everybody knows that Dominion Power gave money to Don Scott or whoever. So I just wanted to make that
No, Stan, you gave
point that
you gave a
this is key
perfect
piece.
you gave a wonderful example or wonderful overview of what dark money is, and that's what the beauty of the Montana plan is. It treats all corporations the same. So it's for-profit C3, for-profit corporations, S corporations, C corporations, LLCs, etc. Nonprofit corporations, C4s, C3s, which shouldn't be involving themselves anyway, and unions. Unions are a corporation. It affects them. It affects everybody the same. So what that essentially does, in using your examples of a C4, when folks give to C4s, that's exactly what they do. They want to remain anonymous. It's the C4 that ends up putting money into a political action committee or a super PAC that way, and their only disclosure is the name of that C4. When you're right, all of the money, the actual contributors of that money remain anonymous. It's because the IRS rules doesn't under IRS, you do not have to disclose your donors in a C4. So the Montana plan basically is just removing corporations out of the equation. We maintain the political action committee, action committee structure, because that's the way citizens can, 2 or 3, 4, whatever number of citizens can get together, form a political action committee to support a ballot issue or what have you. We're not changing any of that. But when you do that, and when you take money from individuals, it has to be disclosed. So while we're not putting limits on what individuals can give to a campaign, we are in states like Montana that has strong transparency and disclosure laws. Montanans will be able to find out exactly who's right. funding those efforts, right. And when they know that, they can make, like I said, they can go back and make informed decisions, or at least have a better chance of making informed decisions when they know who's behind certain either candidates or issues. And I think the perfect example of that is, whether you like him or not, like him or love him, is Elon Musk in the judicial elections in Wisconsin earlier this year. Mm-hmm. So he was out, he told everybody he's giving all of this money in these campaigns. Everybody knew who was behind the money there, because he was very transparent and upfront about that. And folks made a decision in part based on that, because they knew who was funding certain things. So you give citizens, no matter what state you're in, the tools or the information for them to put whatever they need to do for their own process together to make these decisions. They generally feel better about whatever their vote is, support, oppose, et cetera, because they know they have that information at their fingertips. We don't have that today, and that's the unfortunate part.
Right. It levels the playing field quite a bit. I think if you take the corporations out of the equation, you still have the individuals who can, like Elon Musk, can donate huge amounts of money. That kind of leads to a question, though, that I have. It's expensive to run campaigns and get your message out. All three of us have been on the ballot, have been candidates. We We know that. We've all three had to raise money. There's almost a certain amount of irony in the fact that you're probably going to have to raise some money to get the message out.
It's
I
well,
doubt
as a
if
matter
you'll
of
get
fact,
much
even
from
more
corporations.
ironic, I started Transparent Election Initiative as a C4, so I could participate, participate that way, not only in Montana, but across the nation, to discuss this idea and educate folks on campaign finance and other things. So believe me, the irony is not lost on me. We're doing things a little bit differently than what a normal C4 does, because I'm putting my money where my mouth is in that aspect. We will have a separate political action committee with its own donors. Should this get on the ballot, should the Montana plan get on the ballot in Montana, and support it that way. Every donor to Transparent Election Initiative, we are not keeping that secret. It's available. And we're not hiding behind IRS guidelines on that. And we tell donors up front that if you give to us, we're not going to keep you anonymous.
Right.
That being said, this initiative has ruffled a few feathers on both sides, on every side. It literally is a nonpartisan, people first initiative. I like to say it's not red or blue, it's green. It's about green. But there are folks on both sides, good C4s, bad C4s, however you want to say it. Those C4s have literally what has, for the past 12, 14 years, funded a majority of citizen-driven initiatives across the country. That's just the vehicle, it's just the industry that's Citizens United has developed to fund and to promote or to support or oppose initiatives. And what we are doing is saying we want to change the way you do business. We want to go back to what it was like before 2010. We want a little bit more accountability, bottom up, not top down. So if you go back, typically, again, I'm just saying typically because there's different examples in different states of folks doing things differently, but typically a large donor or a large organization gives a large amount of money to a group of folks and they spread that out and do their messaging to get an initiative passed. That did not happen with the Transparent Election.
What a shocker.
We have been scraping and utilizing the resources that we have available to us to raise money from across the nation. And every cent that we've raised so far has been from small donors. So not had one org wrote us a check for any amount of money. And while some are supportive and some are quiet about it, some have opposed what we're doing. No one has ponied up with, and we're not, and not that we would, we'd have to determine how we'd utilize that anyway. But it just goes to show you that there are a lot of folks that are in the space where you would think that this would be something they would want to latch onto, that they're being very cautious about it because
Right.
they don't want to change the way they do business. I mean, like I said, and that's the good, and people I like, people I respect, and I understand that. But the difference is with us is while those folks aren't stepping up yet, and a couple have, I should say. Issue one is a C3. They don't get into C4. They don't get into spending and campaigns. Issue one is a national organization on campaign finance and money in politics that have been supportive of our efforts since the beginning, and even did some recent polling on this. I'll talk about in a minute. Center for American Progress, where Tom works, has just recently decided that they are going to promote the concept and work in states, or at least promote it in states to get done that they can access. But for all intents and purposes, it's me, it's my team, it's hundreds of citizens from across the state of Montana. And quite honestly, that's how this is going to be successful, because the rank and file, whether they support a C4, a good C4 or a bad C4, whether they're in a union or not in a union, whether they work for a corporation or support a nonprofit, which they may like, they all understand that the way to address this is to get money out of politics, and the one of the first steps is to remove the ability of corporations and dark money to spend in our elections.
So for those that are listening and who are interested and want to help out, what kind of help do you need, and where can they get more information, and how can they contribute to the cause, and what is it that you need?
Right now, I mean, everything is on the website, and you can go to transparentelection.org, is just one, is not plural, so transparentelection.org. But you can also get there through montanaplan.com or themontanaplan.com. We have a number of different domains that we have pointed to the same place. And if you go there, you'll find that you can learn everything about what we're doing. Talk about what the mechanism is about. We have the language that we proposed that's in front of the Supreme Court right now, and how it's going to change our Constitution. Lots of resources, explainers, who's supporting us. While it's not political, we have folks from both sides of the aisle. Former Governor Mark Roscoe is supporting this effort, as is Senator John Tester, or former Senator John Tester, and a number of folks in between supporting this effort, and college professors and legal minds from across the country that understand that corporate law is much different than regulating something that they already have, and that this is probably an idea that most people in the corporate world probably wondered why it took so damn long to come around to actually thinking about how corporations are actually formed in the first place. That being said, people are interested in what they can do in their own communities and their own states. And like I said, we're working to mobilize, getting resources and that initial information out to each of those. Anybody that asks, we're trying to get as much information out to them so they can understand what type of steps they would need to take in their states to get this done. Some states are looking at it legislatively, other folks are looking at it through ballot initiative. But the big piece of this, I mean, really is, I think, is money. So we'll always take contributions. There's a way to contribute, but volunteer. We're going to need not only volunteers to, I could use help, messaging, and we're getting student interns and people putting messaging together and reviewing, doing some research on campaign finance in other states. So lots of things we can put people to work doing and getting us information back. And we just want to make sure that it's available to anybody that wants to take this and run with it. I really think at some point this is going to, certainly it already has grown beyond Montana, but we can become one of those organizations that can help empower other folks in other states to empower their citizens to assist and work on this effort. But it does take a lot of money. I mean, the last two initiatives in the state of Montana, that one passed, one didn't, each were close to $30 million to getting on the ballot to the ultimate vote. That's each. I can tell you that we are not a $30 million initiative, and we're not addressing it that way. Even if we wanted to, just because of the roadblocks I said, we won't have those kind of large donors coming in. But what we have that is different, I think, than other folks have had, is we have this desire by just normal citizens on the ground, understanding that this is a huge issue, and finally seeing some light that it could actually assist in breaking that hold that Citizens United has had on us this past several years.
Yeah, so if someone wants to reach out, they can contact you, get a hold of you through the website.
Yep, the website. They can volunteer. There's a form there. There's the email addresses on there. They can learn about, so we have a blog. There's links to the blog, lots of resources if people want to understand about dark money. Lots of good organizations that have talked about these kind of issues for a long time. There's lots of data out there. We've just been to the point where there's nothing we can do about it. So there's lots of data about the problem. There just hasn't been a lot of hoopla about a solution. And now we have hooplas about the solution, which is us. So that's good.
Yeah.
Well, so if you live in Montana, if you're watching this somehow from Montana, and you're not already part of Jeff's group, he could use volunteers collecting signatures on petitions on the ground there in Montana. But if you're not in Montana, if you're in Virginia or in other states, there's a couple of things you could do. You could sign up to help with messaging. If you're a graphic designer, you could help design flyers and mailings and things, website, things like that. You can volunteer to do research about how this works in other states. And if you're interested in starting a program like this in another state, then Jeff and his team have created a template for that, right? So you could learn about that as well. And as always, what Scott and Jeff and I all know about these kinds of fundraising things, even $1 can matter, right? Because if 10,000 people see this or see their website or find out about it, and every one of them just gives $5, then he's got $50K he can use to get the message out. So even a little bit helps. You don't have to break your pocket.
And we have lots of $1 donations. We really do.
Yeah.
I mean,
so don't be shy. That does matter. Those little ones do matter.
And I don't want if you can't and people can't give they shouldn't have to I don't want them to give up something to be able to give, but just words of encouragement is great. I mean, just a note saying I can't help you out, but we love what you're doing. That goes a long way to it keeps me. This is we were talking about this before we started, Stan. This is a full-time job for me at this point, and it's going to remain a full-time job for me and for well into the future. And those kind of conversations that I have with folks across the country really do keep me going and knowing I'm on the right path. And it's sometimes we're all like that. We all need a little encouragement sometimes. So if you can't give, I understand that. Just give us a, attaboy. We'll be good.
Right.
And give that attaboy on social media, right?
Yeah.
Give that attaboy on your Facebook page or your TikTok or your Instagram or YouTube. Share this video with people who are interested in this subject and who worry about the same problems that Citizens United had caused. Right, because that's
Absolutely.
one way. Are you on any social media, Jeff? You guys
we
have
have a Facebook page, an X account, YouTube, Instagram. We will be getting on TikTok soon. Also, all the major ones. They're slowly being built up. So,
right, and you can see on the screen here the links to those or the handles for those social media accounts. So if you'd like to go. And we'll get in the show notes too to make it easy for you. But get out there, even if you can't throw that $1 in there, that price of a cup of coffee in there, get out there and spread the word on social media that this is happening, because there's a lot of people out there in Montana and in other states who understand this problem and want to do something about it. And all they need to know is that someone has started working on this, right? Right, Scott? Right, Jeff?
Yeah, all they have to do is, have you heard about the Montana plan? And they go, let me just say one more thing, because sometimes, well, how do I talk to people about this? Because it's one of those things too, I think, can finally bring partisan folks together, Democrats and Republicans. It's going to be hard, but it's one of those things that I think we all agree on. Just ask your friend, your family, your neighbor, your folks, do you think there's too much money in politics? And I can almost guarantee you the answer is always going to be yes. And that's what starts the conversation. Well, can we do something about it? Well, someone in Montana is trying, and this is what they're doing. At least that's what starts the discussion, because it's not going to be a 50-50 whether you get a yes or not. It is probably 99.9% for certain. You ask that question simply, is there too much money in politics? The answer is going to be yes. And there's the conversation.
So what's special about this initiative and about Jeff is instead of just talking about it, instead of just complaining about it, Jeff is out doing something about it. And I've worked with Jeff for a couple of years, and I've always been impressed by his optimism and his hard work, his altruism, and his desire to do what's best for the community and for Montana. And all of us should be inspired and uplifted by that, and should emulate that same kind of service ethic. Don't just complain about something, fix it. Work with like-minded people. And then we have a much better chance of solving the challenges that we face nationally and we face in our own communities.
That was very kind, Scott. Thank you. I appreciate that.
You know, folks, money in politics is a problem. We feel that in Virginia when politicians basically knuckle under to Dominion. Every time Dominion wants something, rates are going up. We see that nationally when corporations and other interest groups basically spend millions, and now it's beginning to be billions of dollars on spreading misinformation, disinformation, criticizing people, calling each other names. And a lot of this is happening because Citizens United basically stripped away all the regulations on this and allowed corporations to give as much money to political campaign type interests as they want to, much of it anonymously, which means you don't even know who's giving the money. Okay. Jeff is out there trying to do something about this. And if you care about this issue, spread the word for Jeff. The key insight here is that if people work together, they can fight this kind of thing. They can do something about it. The grassroots has power. If they get together, get out there and collect the signatures on petitions, give a dollar to the campaign, talk to people, spread it on your social media, and just work. The corporations have power because they have money, and they have power because they have politicians in their pocket. And that's one of the things we need to do, is bring power back to the people by taking that corporate money, at least some of it, out of the politicians' pockets. So that's my take on all this real quick. Jeff, Scott, final words, final thoughts?
I'll let you go first, Jeff.
First of all, thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate the invite. Always happy to talk. Come back and talk again. And you both hit it. You both hit the nail on the head. It really is about just local folks. It's too commonplace today where we don't roll up our sleeves and just I'll end with this. Anyone that's 25 or younger, maybe even 30 or younger now, know nothing more in politics than Citizens United. That's the only thing they know, is just that all of this messaging and spending. That's not the way it used to be. We used to be able to understand, be able to reach out to our politicians, learn about what the issues are, have those. We hear it. It's not a long memory past. The kitchen table issues, talk about kitchen table issues with your candidate or your politician. We can get back to that. We just need to clear the smoke and the fog,
Right.
clear the fog away,
Right.
and so we can actually get there. And I think the way to do that is finally getting rid of money in politics and understanding what understanding what folks really need from their elected officials. And I think this is one way to do it. Thanks again, gentlemen. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you for your time, Jeff, and thank you for your leadership, not just in Montana and the projects that we've worked together on, but your leadership on this. We need leaders today, and you're stepping up, so thank you very much.
I appreciate that.
Thank you much.
And folks,
Thanks.
when I ran for the state Senate, my tagline was Commonwealth, not corporate wealth. So this is a big area of interest of mine. I think it's very important. And Jeff, we really appreciate you coming on, the very first guest on the Foggy Bottom Line podcast. So we appreciate that. We appreciate your time and your expertise, and like Scott said, your leadership. And yes, we'd love to have you back on in a few months to get an update on your progress and where it's going, and if you have any new challenges and what progress you're making.
Perfect. I'll be there.
We'll talk here. Maybe the first part of the new year we'll get you back on. In the meantime, folks, you can start looking for some other guests. We're inviting the local candidates in the Congressional District 1 and 5 here in Virginia. We'll have any candidate who wants to be on, in fact, but we're going to start having some guests on the show, candidates, some other folks, to try to get at some of the issues of the day that we think are important. So keep an eye out for that. Keep an eye out for Jeff's return. And this is Stan Scott with Foggy Bottom Line Media. You can find us at www.foggybottomline. You can find us on Insta and TikTok at Foggy Bottom Line, and we're on YouTube at Foggy Bottom Line Media. Jeff's website, again, is montanaplan.com and transparentelections.org. Is that right? Transparentelection.org. And we'll get you the handles for his. We'll have the handles for his social media as well, because that's really a key piece to this. Thanks, gentlemen, for being on. Really appreciate you. Appreciate you for listening. Spread the word. Subscribe. Share. Comment. Let us know how we're doing. Encourage us or discourage us, as you will. But we're going to keep going. Two old Army vets with a microphone trying to get some information out there that will help us all make good political, economic, and really quality of life decisions. Gentlemen, thank you very much. Appreciate you being on. We went a little bit long, but it's a great conversation, and we really appreciate both of you joining to do that. So, Jeff, once more, thank you very much. Appreciate you joining.
Thank you, guys.
Take care, everyone.
Carry on.
Carry on. Have a good one. Enjoy your day, everyone. We'll talk soon.